and thank you for tuning in to Chompin at the Bit. This is episode 48, and we're going to go ahead and get back into some football talk, as it is game night, Thursday night football. So I definitely want to go ahead and preview that matchup for you before the game kicks off at around 8:15, so like 45 minutes from now. And it's Cardinals Seahawks tonight, so we'll go through that, break down the matchup. I'll obviously give you prediction at the end of the episode, so that'll be the first pick of week 11. And I know I didn't get a chance to review my week 10 picks, so definitely do that this episode as well. And like I said, Thursday night football kicks off week 11, first pick of week 11. And I know this week has been a little crazy with the NBA capturing the sports world. And for me, it's been great because, you know, I'm a big fan of all sports. Football and basketball are probably my two favorites. So with basketball making news, it's been great. And, I guess my last episode was before the draft. And then it's been a couple of days since I've been with you guys. But yeah, so I will get back into regular schedule, of course. This week was just a weird week. But next week definitely I will try to do one every day, but we'll see. But anyway, so I will definitely get back into basketball tomorrow's episode, as I'm going to look back at the draft, see what picks I liked, which ones I didn't like, which ones I might be on the fence about, and kind of wait and see attitude with those. Plus, free agency starts tomorrow. As I said before, NBA offseason is really truncated this year, with them kicking off December 22nd, so everything's happening quickly. So we just had the draft, the trade window's open, and now we're getting free agency, so news probably will start coming even at a faster pace as we lead up to preseason basketball the week before the regular season starts. I think like December 11th through the 19th, and that's not even that far away. So, we'll look at NBA stuff, expecting some free agency news tomorrow, but we'll get into that in tomorrow's episode. Like I said, we're going to take a look NFL tonight, Thursday night football, which also means we are a week away from Thanksgiving, people. And we all know Thanksgiving's a big NFL day as well, so got to look forward to that. But before we look at the Cardinals-Seahawks matchup, just as a quick, top story from week 10 coming out of the weekend. And of course, the biggest story was Drew Brees. So, if you watch the game, Drew Brees dropped back. He kind of took a hit from, I can't remember the D lineman's name, and the D lineman, took him down to the ground. Weight came down on him, and Drew Brees was slow to get up. He walked over to the sideline, and from that, I think he walked to the locker room or the tent or whatever, came back. We saw him talking to Sean Payton, and for what we know now from that conversation, he kind of let Sean Payton know that he couldn't really finish the game. So we saw Jameis Winston for a little bit. The Saints did win the game, but the question coming out of that was, what's the status of Drew Brees? So, we got the preliminary report that could be a rib injury, maybe a shoulder injury, but as we got into the week, we learned that he was broken ribs, well, fractured ribs, but broken ribs. And we were told that Brees is going to go ahead and have a second opinion just to kind of see where everything is. Well, now we know after the second opinion, he has 5 broken ribs and a punctured lung. Now, when I heard that, I automatically thought back to Drew Bledsoe, another Drew. Now, this is taking you way back, but back when, was that 2000? No, 01. Tom Brady's first year. Bledsoe scrambled to the right. He took a hit, landed awkwardly. And I believe what happened to him was he fractured ribs and he punctured a lung as well. And we all know how that story went. Brady went in, became the quarterback going forward. Yeah. Now, not saying that's going to happen with the Saints here, but I'm guessing Breeze is probably going to miss at least a couple of weeks. They may even put him on IR just to give him 3 weeks off, just to make sure he can actually come back from this injury and be, somewhat close to 100%. But I guess backtrack a little bit. The interesting thing with the injury was it turns out he didn't break all of his ribs in the game on Sunday. He had actually broken 3 ribs the game before. The problem was, I guess he had some swelling. So when they went to look at the MRI or whatever, I guess the swelling covered up the actual rib injury. So he went into the game last week with already having broken ribs. But I'm guessing he could play with it. Maybe, hampered his throwing delivery a little bit, but he was willing to go through with it. So I'm guessing once he broke the other 2 ribs on the other side of his rib cage, plus the punctured lung, of course, that's where it became the point he couldn't play anymore. Because I believe the report is when he was talking to Sean Payton, he told him, he's having a little trouble breathing. That's why he couldn't go back in. And of course, with the punctured lung, that's what we learned about later in the week. So now we know Drew Brees is out, of course, for this week. So the biggest question becomes, the Saints are going to play the Falcons, who are coming off their bye. And who should start against Atlanta? They have Taysom Hill, who will take like 3 or 4 quarterback snaps a game anywhere where Drew Brees was in, since Taysom Hill is kind of their Swiss Army knife offensive player. He could line up at quarterback. He's lined up wide receiver, tight end, running back, fullback. He does it all for them. So, of course, with Breeze out, you could just put Taysom Hill back there, let him be the quarterback. And then the backup is Jameis Winston, who is this year's version of Teddy Bridgewater. If you remember last year, Breeze got hurt. They brought in Teddy Bridgewater. Bridgewater played like 5 games. I think he went 4-1 in those 5 games, which led to him getting the deal with Carolina this year. And Winston's there on a 1-year deal. He's hoping to kind of, catch that lightning that Bridgewater caught. Hoping at some point he might get a chance to play a few games and then build back his value for next season. So, of course, this is as good a time as any to put Jameis Winston in there, see what he's learned from Drew Brees. So ultimately, I think for the Falcons, they will see both Hill and Winston under center. But what I think the Saints should do is they should let Winston be the starting quarterback. You still use Taysom Hill the way you do, because as we know from Winston's days in Tampa Bay, Winston can put up numbers. I believe last year Winston was the only quarterback to throw for over 5,000 yards, even though he had a pretty average year in terms of touchdown turnover ratio, which is what ultimately led them to pursuing Tom Brady in free agency and letting Winston go. But like I said, I would start Winston at quarterback only because Winston is more of a threat throwing the ball. Winston has a good arm, and for that Saints offense, they have weapons with Michael Thomas. They have Jared Cook. You have Kamara out of the backfield. You have Emmanuel Sanders on the other side of Michael Thomas. So, and we know that the weakness is the Falcons' defense, more so the secondary. So if the offensive line can block for Winston, he should be able to find open receivers against the Falcons' defense. And like I said, he's talented enough quarterback to put up points if, you know, he doesn't have his turnover issues, which we've seen when he started for Tampa Bay. He would have games where he'd throw, 3-4 interceptions, but he would also have games where he would throw 3-4 touchdowns with only an interception or two. So, with that being said, I think for the Falcons, if Taysom Hill, comes out after the kickoff and is lined up under center as the starting quarterback, I think that's a win. Because, Taysom Hill was a quarterback at BYU, but he is more known for his legs than his arm. So I think Hill makes the defense's job a little easier. Yeah, he can throw it a little bit, but when it comes to throwing the ball, I would more likely see quick, short passes with Hill, whereas Winston loves throwing the ball downfield, as he was kind of forced to do with Bruce Arians down in Tampa Bay. And with the Saints' weapons, they are, with Cook and Sanders especially. Sanders is the guy who loves running deep patterns and, catching long touchdowns. Cook is a guy who can work the middle of the field, a little bit downfield as well, depending on your linebacker speed. That opens up for Thomas to run, his slant game, outs toward the sideline, curl routes, stuff like that. So like I said, if I'm Sean Payton, I'm starting Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston gives the Saints the best chance to win against the Falcons. But we'll have to see Sunday what Payton does and who he goes with. But that's definitely the big story coming out of last week. But, we moved on now to week 11 and kicks off tonight with a great game, Thursday Night Football, Cardinals-Seahawks. So, as I've said on here before, the NFC South, I believe, is the toughest division. Some people will say the AFC North with the Steelers, Ravens, and Browns. But, you look at the NFC West, you have the Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks. All three teams are 6-3. The Cardinals, by way of the tiebreaker, are leading the division right now with the Rams and then the Seahawks. So both teams 6-3, three-way tie. They're got a nice rivalry going, especially lately. And the winner of this game, of course, will obviously be the leader going into the weekend. Have to see what the Rams do over the weekend and whether a team comes out of this alone atop the NFC West. But like I said, a rivalry. Last time they played, which was 4 weeks ago, and it was the first time we got Kyler Murray. Outside of last year, rookie year, but the new Kyler Murray versus Russell Wilson. Then Wilson was, up there in the MVP race. Kyler Murray was the guy kind of inching up slowly. Well, now, turning around 4 weeks later, Kyler Murray might be the MVP favorite right now. And Russell Wilson, who has fallen off with his recent play. So, and with that recent play, the Seahawks come in losing 3 of their last 4. And, that losing, not streak because they did win a game within there, but this recent, losing stretch that the Seahawks have gone through, if you remember, started with that game Sunday night against the Cardinals when, Kyler Murray led the Cardinals on a late drive, forced overtime, and then in overtime, the Cardinals were able to pull out the game and beat the Seahawks, which was, like I said, probably the best Sunday night game that we've had so far. And I would not be surprised if this Thursday night game is just chapter 2 from that game. Another close game, possibly overtime. Wouldn't be mad if it did. Because like I said, these two teams play well against each other, and the games are just wildly entertaining. Cardinals, of course, come in, and they're riding a nice high. They won 4 of 5, and their only loss in that stretch was to the Dolphins. And we've seen with the Dolphins that they are another team that's actually 6-3 as well. But you could kind of see the mirror of the Dolphins and the Cardinals. Young quarterbacks leading those teams, playing well, and both teams are really rallying around their young quarterback, feeding off their young quarterback's energy, and now they are where they are right now, 6-3. So like I said, Kyler Murray, is coming in off of the game against Buffalo, where they found themselves down late yet again, and we all remember the game ended on a Hail Mary from Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins, where Murray rolled out to his left. Mind you, he's a right-handed quarterback, so rolling out to your left is always tougher than going to your right with all your momentum carrying you to your strong side, your right arm. So he goes to left. He had to juke the defensive end to kind of create more space and to give himself time to, turn his body to throw the Hail Mary down the left sideline to DeAndre Hopkins. And he was able to pull it off because Hopkins, who I will tell people, I believe Hopkins is the best wide receiver in the game. I know down here in Falcon country, they think it's Julio Jones, but trust me, DeAndre Hopkins, I would take over Julio Jones. They're both, they both have their stats and all that, but I just like Hopkins more. So Hopkins was down in the end zone, and he caught it over, I think it was 3 Bills secondary players. So that just shows you right there the greatness of Hopkins. And, of course, there was all this talk about, what the Bills did wrong on the play, where they didn't jam Hopkins off the line, which is what you're supposed to do. So Hopkins had a free run to the end zone and all that. They put a little pressure on Murray, but he was able to get outside of it. Anyway, I say all that to say, Murray and this offense, they're coming off that high against Buffalo. I guess there's a chance they could have a little letdown early on, but I do think playing the Seahawks, a divisional game, will help them maintain their energy. So the biggest question will be the Seahawks, where their defense has really been exposed lately, especially the secondary has issues. What kind of game plan can they scheme up to slow down this high-powered Cardinal offense? I mean, it's not just Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins you have to worry about. You still have the ageless wonder, Larry Fitzgerald, who can still make plays for you. You have Kenyon Drake in the backfield. Plus you have Chase Edmond. He also gets carries in the backfield. You have to worry about Murray and his running ability. So what exactly can Seattle do? I mean, they have Jamal Adams, but he's more of a run stuffer, so maybe you use Jamal Adams as a spy on Kyler Murray, and hopefully you can keep him in the pocket. But I think if Seattle can't get pressure with their front four, then Kyler Murray's going to have a lot of time back there, and you can't expect the Seahawks secondary, which is already struggling, to cover Hopkins and Fitzgerald for 3, 4, 5 seconds, because those guys are talented enough. They'll find openings, and then it's going to be just target practice for Kyler Murray. So it's definitely going to be interesting. And then even on the other side of the ball, the Cardinals defense is a good defense, but the bigger issue is Russell Wilson, who I've been touting all year. Well, recently his play has slipped big time, and he's kind of become a turnover machine all of a sudden. He had the game against Buffalo where he had 2 interceptions and he lost 2 fumbles. Last week against the Rams, he threw a big interception in the end zone, and I think he threw another one as well in the middle of the field. So I think that's kind of coming. I think the pressure of Wilson having to do everything for Seattle has really come down on him these past few weeks, and it's led to a lot of turnovers by forcing the ball in tight windows where he shouldn't. Good news is I believe their top 2 running backs are supposed to play tonight. So if they can establish a little bit of a run game, then that should help Russell Wilson, get back to play action, rollouts, stuff like that, to help give him some easy throws to early on and build some momentum to try to get back to that connection with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who's questionable but is expected to play. So for the most part, both teams are relatively healthy coming into this game. It is a short week as well, so we will have to see how that plays into it all. But yeah, it's still going to be a great matchup. Like I said before, the first matchup, epic Sunday night game, and I'm expecting more of the same from this game. It's a big game as well. I mean, if you're looking at the NFC, for right now, all 3 teams in the NFC West are pretty safe in terms of a playoff spot, but the winner here can actually, the winner here would still be like a half game behind for the 1 seed in the NFC, but depending on what happens on Sunday with Green Bay and Saints and the Bucks, the winner here could find themselves by the end of Monday Night Football number 1 in the NFC. So that's a big deal. Even the loser here, you fall to 6-4, still safely within the playoffs. So it's a big game for playoff positioning because, like I said, we're coming into week 11. The big deal now is getting yourself into the playoff and then try to get as high a seed as you can. So both teams will definitely be on their A game tonight. At least they should be. As I said before, Kyler Murray, MVP favorite right now, at least to me. Like, just looking at his numbers, he has 17 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So better than 2-to-1 touchdown turnover ratio. That's great. But the number that really stood out to me was he has 10 rushing touchdowns this year. So, put that in. He's got 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, those are great numbers. And like I said, for a second year, for him to be doing this is just great. Love watching him play, watching the Cardinals play. He and Hopkins have already formed a chemistry that, for next few years will definitely be a dangerous one in the NFC. Let's see. But yeah, and also it's been a good year for the coach. Was it Kingsbury, where a lot of people were questioning whether he even deserved this job. Well, what we're seeing this year is he definitely does. He's another young offensive-minded coach that's doing well in the NFL. So I expect that to, help the trend come next season in terms of coach hirings. You'll probably see the league lean, young, offensive-minded, which works for, Eric Bieniemy and guys like that who are trying to get jobs. They will probably jump to the top of a lot of teams' lists come next year. As we've seen with the NFL, it's definitely a league where, if you set a trend, other teams will follow. So Kingsbury will probably be the blueprint for coaching hires come next year. But for this matchup, the biggest thing for me is I'm looking at the Seahawks defense. They're giving up 460 yards a game. I mean, that's really high. That just lets you know how bad their defense has been. And the fact that they're 6-3, it's kind of crazy right now. But they give up only like 95 on the ground. That's not to say their run defense is actually good. It's just that most teams realize you can take full advantage of their secondary, so they kind of just throw the ball all over the field on Seattle. And I mean, with that, like I said, with the first Cardinal game kind of started this really steep downhill turn for Seattle. They gave up 37 points in that game. They turned around and gave up 27 to the Niners. And if you remember that game, Garoppolo was out. I believe they were missing Deebo Samuel as well. So they started, was it Nick Mullins in that game? I think CJ Beathard played a little bit. For those two to get 27 on you, that's still high. Then they turned around, gave up 44 to Josh Allen in Buffalo. That game where Russell Wilson had 4 turnovers. So it wasn't all on the defense, but a good amount of that was on the defense. And then last week they gave up 23 to the Rams in another loss. So I guess based off of that trend, where they give up close to 40 or over 40, then they go back down to the mid-20s. They gave up 23 to the Rams. I guess the Cardinals should be expecting to score high 30s, maybe low 40s in this game. So, like I said, the key factor in this game is Seahawks defense. If they can keep Kyler Murray and that offense to field goals early on instead of touchdowns, and Russell Wilson doesn't turn the ball over, then this is a game that could be close late, and then we'll just have to see maybe who has the ball last in terms of who might win this game. But so coming into this game, oddly enough, with all that I've gone through, you would think the Cardinals would be the favorite in this matchup. But once again, I get the spread based off of the ESPN fantasy app, where they have like a football pick'em. So I get the spread off of there. The Seahawks come into this matchup as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm kind of intrigued as to why the Seahawks are the favorite, but it must be, they are figuring that Seahawks will bounce back. Russell Wilson will bounce back, probably with the running backs coming back in. Maybe they'll be able to play a little better. Plus, it's in Seattle, and even though it's not going to be like the full capacity 12 man and all that, Seattle's still a tough place to play. And I guess that's what led them to give them the 3.5 point favorite. But I'm taking the Cardinals to cover here. And with that, I'm also taking the Cardinals to win tonight's matchup. So it's going to be, I guess, just taking the underdog for the straight win here. But I am picking the Cardinals to cover. Because even if the Seahawks can somehow find a way to pull this one out, I can't see it being by more than a field goal. So I'm taking the Cards here. For me, I would go with the Cardinals. Probably 37, Seahawks 30. Yeah, I'll go 37-30, Cardinals over the Seahawks. So, with that, that's the first pick for Week 11. Once again, if you're new here, I always do picks each week. Start off with Thursday Night Football, then Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Falcons game, Patriots game, one wild card game. So that's the first one for Week 11. But we're going to have to go ahead and look back at Week 10 to see how well I did Week 10 to kind of set what my record is as we look ahead to Week 11. So just to run through them quickly. First game was last Thursday night's game, where I took Tennessee as a 2.5 point favorite over the Colts. If you remember that game, that was a loss because Tennessee got blown out. Was it 34-17? So that was not just a loss, but an embarrassing loss. But, we'll keep forging ahead. Went with Cleveland was a 3.5 point favorite over the Houston Texans. Okay, hit the wrong button there. Sorry, but Cleveland 3.5 point favorite over the Houston Texans, and so Cleveland won the game 10-7. Like I said, spread was 3.5, so they ultimately didn't cover. But I kind of feel like I should take the win on that one, because remember that game? Nick Chubb, late in the game, had a wide open field down the left sideline as he broke through the defense. And then he ran the ball out of bounds on like the one. They kneeled for the win. And then everybody came back and was like, oh, that's the right play to make. So if Chubb just went the extra yard, went into the end zone, I would have won that matchup, would have covered. So thanks a lot, Nick Chubb. And I don't think it was the right play. It was stupid. I get why he did it, but everybody's looking at, whoa, remember what happened with the Falcons and Todd Gurley? He scored and it turned out to be bad. Yeah, when he scored that, they went up, what was it? How much did they go? 3 points or 4? And then the porous Falcons defense gave up a touchdown. The reason why that one was bad is because we already knew the Falcons defense was terrible, so you didn't want to put the game in their hands. This end, it would have been 17-7. So with like 50 seconds left, the odds of the Texans, who had struggled all day, scoring 10 points in 50 seconds was pretty much impossible. But I digress. I'll take an L on that one. Third game I did was Tampa Bay. I took over Carolina. Carolina at home was a 5.5 point underdog. And Tampa Bay won that one easily, 46-23. So that was a great one for me. And in that one, second week with Antonio Brown, offense was just way too much for Carolina. Carolina had a couple of key injuries coming out of that game. Christian McCaffrey hurt his shoulder after he just came back from, was it the hamstring injury? So, which he's also out again this week. Been a tough week for the Christian McCaffrey owners in fantasy. And Teddy Bridgewater took an awkward hit late in that game. Went down with an apparent knee injury, but I think he's supposed to be fine. We'll have to see later in the week how that goes. So 1-2 so far from last week. Fourth game, I don't really know what I was thinking, but I took Cincinnati to upset the Steelers. Steelers are a 7.5 point favorite, and the Steelers covered pretty easily. What was the score of that game? 36-10. So I clearly lost that one easily. Fifth game, I took Baltimore over New England, and New England was a 6.5 point underdog. And of course, Cam Newton and the Patriots came up with the perfect game plan against Baltimore, pulled the big upset of last week, and ended up winning 23-17. So I lost that one, even though I basically have picked, I think, New England in every game this year, but thought I'd stop being a homer and, kind of went analytically and thought, New England's struggling, Baltimore and all that. The weather's supposed to be pretty bad. Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. It seems like a perfect game for Baltimore to get a win in New England. Well, Baltimore sucked. So, took a loss going against my home team. So, I will take that L, but was still happy that they won. Then the final game was the Monday night game where, the game was pretty ugly, but I did take Minnesota to win that one. Chicago was a 2.5 point home underdog. So I took Minnesota. Minnesota did win 19-13. Gave me a win. So from week 10, I went 2-4, which that's an L for the week. But like I said, If Chubb went that extra yard, I'd have been 3-3. And if I'd gone with my homer ways, picked the Patriots, I could have been 4-2 last week, but 2-4 is what I was. We'll go with that. Now my overall record is 29-30, back under 500 at 49.2%. I'm still shooting for 60%. I really got to pick it up now, though, because running out of weeks very quickly here. So yeah. So hopefully this Cardinals Seahawks pick helps me out, gets me going this week, and I can turn it around. I mean, at this point, I probably have to definitely go 4-2 to make it back up, get back over 500 and get close to 60. But, with that, thank you for tuning in. Get you started for Thursday Night Football. Hopefully get a chance to listen to this before the game gets started. Get some good pointers on what you're expected to see. But like I said early in the episode, tomorrow night's episode, we'll definitely go back to the NBA. There's a lot of news floating around. With free agency, there should be even more news, but we'll have to look at, like I said, draft, maybe see who won the draft. So look at draft winners, losers. Talk about the Gordon Hayward situation, which I've been following as a Celtics fan. See what's going on there, as well as some trades that happened between, I guess, the draft preview and tomorrow's episode. We'll see everything that happened there. And then with free agency opening up, I'm expecting some names to sign places, and we'll definitely go over all of that. But yeah, it's definitely tune in for that. It's going to be a lot of information thrown at you, and it's going to be a good one. So hope you enjoyed what you heard. New here, definitely subscribe wherever you are listening, whatever platform you're listening to the podcast on, subscribe. But hit up the Facebook page. You can follow the show there, and then go to Twitter. Well, the Facebook page is Chompin at the Bit. Go to Twitter at Chompin Podcast. Follow the show there. You can interact with me on there. I do put up polls. I started doing that recently, so definitely should follow the show on Twitter. I put up polls based off of big sports news, and so then that way, you can kind of let your voice be heard on big sports news there, and then bring it on to here. So definitely do that. But yeah, thank you again. Be safe out there, and I will definitely join you tomorrow. Like I said, get back to the NBA talk. All right.